Mr. Speaker, most Americans remember 1 year ago tomorrow, President Obama and Vice President Biden launched what the White House enthusiastically called the Recovery Summer. This was supposed to be a 6-week-long push to highlight what the Obama administration said would be jobs created last summer by a surge in federal stimulus spending across the country. Senior advisor to the President, David Axelrod, said, and I quote, "This summer will be the most active Recovery Act season yet, with thousands of highly visible road, bridge, water, and other infrastructure projects breaking ground across the country, giving the American people a first-hand look at the Recovery Act in their own backyards and making it crystal clear what the cost would have been of doing nothing," end quote. Yet, the only thing that's crystal clear to the majority of Americans is that there is nothing to show from the Democrats' failed economic policies that have set our country on a road to ruin. Since President Obama has taken office, he has done absolutely nothing to promote American energy production. He's done nothing to reduce the regulatory burdens on small business owners. He has done nothing to fix the tax code to help job creators. He has done nothing to increase the competitiveness for American manufacturers. And he has done nothing to pay down America's unsustainable debt burden and to bring back confidence among investors and entrepreneurs by supporting long-term American growth, American economic growth. And now, President Obama is selling the sequel to last year's Recovery Summer sales pitch and kicking off this summer by trying to convince the American people that 28 consecutive months of unemployment above 8% is just a bump in the road to recovery. In addition, a number of Democrats are calling for billions more in taxpayer dollars to be spent on yet another wasteful stimulus to create jobs. But Americans aren't buying it. Unemployment is nowhere the 6.8% level at which the administration claimed it would be today if the stimulus was signed into law. When Americans' promise and prosperity and security for future generations is at stake, this cannot be brushed off as just a bump in the road. It is a mountain of constraint put in place by a litany of failed Democrat policies and unfulfilled promises. And what's worse is that President Obama recently laughed off the fact that his stimulus projects, which are costing taxpayers trillions of dollars, have failed to live up to their promise to create new jobs. Democrats promised this would be the summer of recovery, but their conflicting assessment of the economy and their double talk has left American families wondering, is this a joke? Well, most economists and the American people are not laughing. Their concern is growing, and confidence in President Obama's economic policies is plunging more and lower every day, and the idea of another stimulus is dead on arrival in the House. In the face of the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression, this administration and the Democrats in Congress are choosing to play politics with economic recovery and continue with another round of empty rhetoric and unfilled promises in their desperate sales pitch again this summer. House Republicans are serious about creating real American jobs, and we're making it our mission to put Americans back to work. We know that what we need are common sense policies that will create jobs in this country immediately. We cannot let this administration have another frivolous shot at wasteful spending of taxpayers' hard-earned dollars, or be given more regulatory power, or allowed to spin its way out of the catastrophic economy the Democrats have created with empty phrases like Recovery Summer. House Republicans have produced a pro-growth, pro-job creation budget, as well as a real plan for America's job creators. Both plans will put the nation on a fiscally sustainable path to restore confidence, lower tax rates, and allow America to remain competitive in the global economy. We want to take the burden of regulation off our job creators and produce more American energy so that Americans can start receiving the paychecks that they need and deserve. And we want to reduce the hostility of the federal government's regulators toward American business, both small and large. We cannot allow this out-of-touch administration to continue with their failed experiments and silly punchlines. We cannot allow Washington Democrats to tax and spend away the futures of our children and our grandchildren. We cannot continue down the road to ruin, Mr. Speaker. Coming from the private sector to Congress, I know that America can and will become prosperous beyond imagination, and millions of new private sector jobs will be created if we would just get back to our founding free market principles and end big government and wasteful spending. It is time we take a different road this summer, Mr. Speaker. We cannot continue on the misguided and irresponsible path endorsed by the other side of the aisle of higher taxes, reckless spending, bigger government, explosive debt, crippling regulation, higher deficits, and unacceptably high unemployment. 81% of Americans know somebody without a job. As a matter of fact, if you look at the unemployment rate that includes underemployed and unemployed, almost 1 out of every 5 Americans is unemployed or underemployed today. Under President Obama's watch, almost 40,000 jobs have been lost every 2 weeks. President Obama's so-called stimulus was signed into law 28 months ago, and there are nearly 2 million Americans, 2 million fewer Americans with jobs today. They have had their chance to make things right last summer, and it has not worked. Now it is our turn. These are undoubtedly tough times, and I want to continue the great American legacy of leaving our children better off than we ourselves are. It pains me to know that only 17% of the mothers in this country believe that their children will be better off in the future. It doesn't have to be this way. There has not been a more important time in our nation's history to realign our principles and policies in light of current economic reality. As the son of a hard-working rancher in the Texas Panhandle, I always reflect back to those tough decisions and sacrifices that my family made around the kitchen table. We had no choice but to live within our means. Every day I remember these life lessons, whether I'm balancing my family budget or making an important decision for my constituents. I must represent the best in terms of taking care of our country's fiscal health. We must make tough decisions on spending, on tax reform, and on reducing our nation's debt. And we must remain committed to spurring economic growth and job creation. We must do this, and most importantly, because we owe it to our children and our grandchildren, so that they're afforded the same American promise and prosperity and security that we were when we were born. Mr. Speaker, about 3 months ago, my wife and I had our first granddaughter. We want that girl, when she grows up, to have the same opportunities to live the American dream that we had when we were born. And Mr. Speaker, before I close, I'd like to ask our American people to remember our country in its prayers during these difficult times, in their prayers during these difficult times, and also to remember to pray for our military men and women who protect it daily. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.